Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. I have a special guest today. We are going to do some fabulous impromptu art lessons with my daughter. Come on back for the video. Hi, this is Rachel.
Hi.
Rachel is actually the mom of Amos. If you go back a couple of videos, you'll see that he did a little abstract. He's my first grandchild. Rachel gave him to me and he named me Goga. So we don't know where it came from, but it came from his little mind and I'm Goga from then on. But Rachel teaches at a very cool high school. It's kind of like, if you're my age, you remember watching the movie and the TV show Fame. This is it. Tell us about that high school.
Yeah, so I teach at the Hamilton Wentworth District School Board's audition-based program of the arts, which means we have a regular catchment of students, but we also have students from all over the school board and beyond to audition, whether that's in a performance discipline or they bring in their portfolio and we interview who want to come to our school for the arts opportunities that we provide. So it's super exciting. We have a bunch of really highly motivated kids, really talented kids, and it's a really fun place to teach.
So the reason why we're filming today, Rachel and I were having a conversation and I show her ad nauseum my abstracts and she gives me really good feedback. And we learned today that even though I did go to college, and I did go to a high school that was really great for the arts and I learned a lot of foundational stuff, but I'm 60 years old now and I've forgotten how or why I know things, and possibly you have the same thing too. So I apply, and I even got like the elements and the principles mixed up with her yesterday and we were chatting about it and I said, well, you've got to come in and let's do a foundational video and you can judge my work, not really judge, but talk about what I'm doing without me even really knowing. And the reason we were talking about it, because I was saying with my abstracts, I'm being pushed to actually know why I'm doing something. And you were talking about the fact that she teaches it to her 9th graders. So
that's what we start with. It's what we start with. We start with the elements in grade 9. And they all know what a line is and what a shape is and what color is, but they don't necessarily how to use it in an effective or interesting way. So that's where we start.
Okay, so what is the difference between elements of design and principles of design? And we're going to put up the point. Zoe's going to do that. Zoe was
one of my students.
Zoe was one of Rachel's students who is now my editor. So Zoe's going to be putting up these things.
So the elements of designs are the things that you see. And if you describe anything visual, whether it's a work of art or not, you're using the elements of design to describe it. So line, shape, form, texture, color, space, value. So I wouldn't have been able to pull that all out. But when we talk about line, I'm like, oh, I know what line is and I know how to vary line. And I do remember specifically in college talking about, a heavier weighted line brings something forward, whereas a fine line recedes. So I remember that. I do know form. I remember learning all about that. Probably you do too, about where light hits a sphere, for example. Yeah. So we talk about line makes shapes. Value makes form.
Oh.
Line can also make form, right? You do contour lines around something. It shows that it's round.
Yep.
But we model 3-dimensionally in a 2-dimensional plane by using value. So it's amazing. Light and darkness.
So light and darkness. So interestingly, in abstracts, are we actually modeling form per se?
You can create form by this idea of depth, which is also the idea of space, but you're not trying to represent an actual 3-dimensional form. So we can talk about real texture and implied texture.
Okay.
Real form or implied form.
And we're going to do that using a painting that I'm working on and an abstract that I'm working on. We're going to, after we talk about this, we're going to go, so stay all the way to the end. It's going to be good. She's going to explain to me why I do things. And so we've got line, form,
shape,
texture. Basic, we understand shape.
Yep.
Texture. So, okay, not all of my, that actually would lend itself even a little more to abstract, wouldn't it?
Well, again, we're talking about real texture versus implied texture. So whether your painting might actually, if you run your hand down it, have a texture.
Right.
Your abstracts definitely do.
Right.
Or a visual texture. But maybe in your landscapes, you're trying to create the texture of a pine tree versus a maple tree. It doesn't have that exactly.
Or glistening
water. So
water.
that's called implied texture.
Okay. Actually, I just learned a major thing. I do that.
So it's not physical. You feel like you know what it would feel like. It doesn't actually feel that way, but you want to communicate that it feels.
I've even titled paintings, like I have one called Cool Waters, because it's like I could dive in and feel that is cool.
There's two more. There's space, so that's where stuff is in your picture.
Right.
And we talk about the picture plane and the depth. Okay. So there's two planes that you're talking about with space. With abstract, you're thinking about it more in your picture plane, your two-dimensional picture plane. If it's a more realistic or representational picture, you're creating the idea of spatial depth. You want things to look like they're farther away.
Right.
And creating that.
Because if you have a lane going up, you're using perspective
space.
And line.
Exactly. Yeah.
That lane is actually a line.
It's pulling you back into space.
That is bigger in the foreground because of
And then color, of course. We can't be on Julia Veenstra's YouTube channel and not talk about color.
Yeah, I use a lot of color. I've been challenged in my abstracts. Interestingly, it's a little side note, Rachel. I've been challenged in my abstracts to try to use a limited palette. That's a valid challenge. So it's not like, oh, that's not me. I think I can try to do it. But it's very limiting. And I showed it to another artist friend. And interestingly, I said, this is one that I sold. I was very proud. I showed her the one that I sold. And then I showed her one that I was practicing a reserved. And she's like, I like it. You're getting form, shape, your composition is good, but you're reserved. Mm-hmm. And she said, it doesn't feel like you. So now I'm learning that. I'm like, okay, so even how somebody paints. Okay, so why don't we talk about principles? So this is one that I went, oh, okay, this might have some aha moments.
Yeah, so when we're explaining it to kids, we talk about the elements being the building blocks. They're the Lego, they're the ingredients, but you can arrange them to make anything. And the principles of design are how you arrange the elements of design. You use the elements of design in certain ways to create principles, and the principles are what makes your composition interesting. It's what evokes a feeling. It's what helps your viewer experience your painting in the way that you want them to experience it.
Okay, can you give me an example using line? You said you can use...
So line, your eye follows line. So the way you use line can create movement. Movement is one of the principles of design. If you want your viewer to spend time looking around your painting, you can direct their eye with line, whether that's real line or implied line. And the longer... You want your viewer to look at your painting, at your work for longer and explore. And maybe you have the first thing you want them to see, but you don't want them to just see your main focal point and then move along. You want to move them around your image, and you can do that with line to create movement.
See, so at first it sounds like, okay, a principle, oh my goodness, this is getting really lofty. But when you explain it that way, line is movement. That makes absolute sense. Yeah. So what's another one?
What's tricky with my students is movement doesn't mean anything in your picture is moving. So they always give examples of like a bird in flight or somebody running. It's not something moving. No. Your eye is what's moving.
We'll show you this in my painting.
Your eye is what's moving, not the thing.
Okay, and then what's another principle?
Unity. Unity is really important. So there's unity and variety. A lot of them have not opposites, but inverses. So it's really important for your pictures to have something unifying. If you're using a color palette that's yours, you're not going to all of a sudden use a color palette that doesn't belong to you.
Sure.
It's going to look not unified. But you also want variety. If everything's the same, that's kind of boring.
Does harmony or harmonious color fit in this?
Yeah, so harmony and unity are often used interchangeably. Okay. So often we talk about color harmonies. Yep. So if it's analogous colors or pastel colors, muted colors, earthy tones, complementary.
There is those so much knowledge.
Is what we would call a color harmony. Harmony in the whole piece, but often we use unity so that we have a different vocabulary word. They know specifically what we're talking about, our students.
Okay, so question for you guys. Do you want me to go in depth on each of these things. Rachel, I think, would be willing.
I'll do it.
To do this with me, and we would use it. I would let her use this at her school. Like we would do some stuff that possibly you could use even to show your students if we did a series. And they wouldn't be consistent, because nothing we do here on the Julie Veenstra Art Channel is consistent, because we're going with the flow. We're living the artful life, and it's what happens every week. Right? Like so we might be interrupted. Like Rachel right now, next week is going on a 5-week trip. So I wouldn't have her for 5 weeks to do any, so it would be a fall kind of series. But let me know in the comments below if you would like to hear a little bit more in depth. But right now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna put the camera on, and Rachel's gonna stand in front and I'll be behind the camera. And she's gonna stand in front of a painting that I've just kind of color blocked, and she will go through the elements and then the principles and how they're working. Now, the first painting I'm doing is a representational painting, which I understand. And this is one of the things that caused this conversation. I use all these things that I learned innately now. I just do it. And I have, interesting you said your own color palette. I have a color palette that I love that is me. You know, if you see a painting by me, you know it's by me because of the color palette. Then we're going to turn to what I think is becoming a successful abstract, and we'll apply her same critique to it. So remember, Rachel is the professional. I am a professional artist, and I do know these things. So when she says it, I go, and you're going to get that too. But know that we came into this video going, let's just point and shoot like we normally do. Just point and shoot. We may miss some stuff. If you have questions, put them below and we'll see if we can get them answered. Okay, let's turn the camera around. All right, I'm gonna be in too. I'm not just gonna be behind. It's my channel. Okay, Rachel.
Okay, so I'm gonna kind of go through the process that we teach our students, which is called the critical analysis process. And often when we talk about that, they're like, critical? I don't want to be critical, or I don't want to critique. They think that means like what is bad about it. It's not at all what it means. Critical analysis means you're able to identify what the artist is doing and what impact that is having. What I talk to them about is the reason that they do that is so that they can identify the experience that they're having when they look at an artwork, and then they can figure out how the artist did it. So as they make their own artwork, they can generate the experience they want their viewers to have.
And I'm going to go off on a tangent here, but I'm finding like that absolutely fascinating, because I've been wanting to do a series on your art journey through the decades, like what it's like to be an artist as a teenager and how as a parent you can support them as a 20s to 30s to 40s. Do you think that, maybe I'm going too far on a tangent and we'll have to do it in another series, but teenagers, they love their friends. They want to be buddy-buddy. So their initial reaction was, I don't want to find anything bad in anybody's work, and you're all good and everything is awesome.
So one of my favorite experiences from my last semester of teaching, I had a really awesome group of grade 11s. And the very first project we did was working through the steps of the creative process really, really intentionally. They had to create an expressive self-portrait. So it didn't have to have their face in it, but it had to represent something about them. And they had to work through the steps of the creative process really intentionally. But one of those is receiving feedback. And I made them pair up with somebody that they trusted, and I made them give that person constructive feedback, something that wasn't there yet. It's not something that's garbage and isn't working, but what could be better. And they were all terrified to do it, not to receive it actually, but to give their friends that feedback.
Yeah.
And for the rest of the semester, they all talked about how that was the most valuable feedback, because it actually does improve their work. They only can see what they can see, and to have that sort of vulnerability and to receive that constructive feedback made their work better. So they were able to receive it, and then that builds a lot of trust, which actually is helpful. But it's true, the initial response is like, I don't want to say anything bad about it.
Yeah, or
in their mind.
I'm impressed that they wanted to receive it.
Yeah.
Because the series that I want to do, the little synopsis is, in your teens, you're saving yourself. In your 20s, you're saving the world. In your 30s, you're saving coupons. In your 40s, you're saving relationships. In your 50s and 60s, you're saving yourself again. And then in your 60s, 70s, and beyond, you're saving the world again, but this time with wisdom and resources. And I want to take that little storyline and apply it to your art journey. So Again, another question. Let me know below if you're interested in that series. So, okay.
Okay, so the first thing that we would do is we'd kind of go through the elements of design. What do we notice about an artwork? And at this point, we're working with an artwork that's not finished.
It's almost finished.
So,
it's almost finished.
What that should lead us to is, what does it still need?
Okay.
What could be, so that's the final step, is like, what could push it even further, which is what your last stage is. What's that last touch? And let's see if I get to the same response as you do.
Okay.
So right away, we're going to probably talk about color first because it stands out. It doesn't have to go in order. And I always tell my students they don't have to talk about all of the elements of design. But
okay, that's a good point.
But the ones that stand out the most, because they're all in there, but they might not be doing that much work.
Sure.
For the overall impact.
Because when I'm painting, I don't always think of line.
Yeah, it might not be the most relevant to the impact that your artwork is having. It's there. There are lines.
And there's form.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right.
So when we talk about color, I think that what's really interesting about Mom's work, about Julia's work, is that there's always a very strong sense of complementary because we have the red background and there's always a lot of green. Mm-hmm. And she has a very particular collection of greens that she uses. And so that there's always going to be those complementary colors. And then we can talk about the principles. So having those complementary colors creates contrast and emphasis.
Okay.
So that makes it a high impact. It's going to be a more energetic piece because there's that contrast with the complementary colors. So if you wanted to create a very muted, calm piece, you don't want that high contrast. You don't want those complementaries. You want colors that were more
thought of it that way.
More connected. They'd be closer together on the color wheel because they're going to feel more gentle.
Rachel, when I think of contrast, I often think of value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not complementary hue.
Right.
Oh.
And
okay. Aha moment for me.
It's lots of things. But right away, having that red background on a landscape that's predominantly green is going to create a lot of energy right away because of the contrast. If we talk about line, like there are really strong lines in here, right?
Yes.
We can talk about the shape and line in this case. I kind of feel the same to me.
To me, if the viewers are watching and they've heard me talk about a color story, and you're kind of saying that that's the line, the color story.
Yeah. So
the movement.
So the way that your eye travels around, it's also repetition. Mm-hmm. So your eye is going to travel to things that are the same, and they're often going to follow a line. Okay. So if you had a patch of red, a patch of red, a patch of red, your eye would bounce from red to red to red. And if they're connected by a line, by a shape that has that movement, then that's going to help the viewer travel around your painting.
And we're using words like traveling and line. It's almost like a road.
Yeah, you're just looking around. Which art scholars have done. They've mapped the way that eyes move around. So this is like backed by science, and they create really cool maps of where your eye stays and where your eye.
Oh my goodness.
It's really interesting with famous, iconic works of art.
Wow. Okay.
So having these swooping lines that are, again, there's repetition because it's the same type of shape over and over again, and it moves across. So you kind of start with what you would understand to be the trunk of the tree, and you move over into the interest of the sky. You look here first because that's the subject, but then you're moving your viewer through to look at all the detail and texture that you've created with color and with line. So very infrequently do you have one element or one principle that totally stands on its own. Okay. They're always interconnected, right? Everything is related. Being able to talk about kind of what's happening and what you're experiencing. And because there's also rhythm is one of them. So there's that over and over and over again. Your eye is, if you've made it with your finger, it's like you're conducting.
Now, okay, so when I'm teaching this, let me know what you think of this. I'm always teaching, repetition, but I don't want the negative space between my repetitive shapes to be equal.
No, because again, that's kind of creating, if we're thinking about rhythm, thinking about music, you want to create a crescendo. Okay. Or you want to create something that's going to grow or shrink and create interest. Right. If you did that, you'd have a very organized piece, which would feel very different.
Which is valid.
Yeah, but that's what you'd feel is something that's very constructive and very organized and feels very stable.
Yes, but
then when
grounded,
but it won't have the energy that you're known for.
Yes, or when I'm teaching, say, a class and I've got somebody who's doing pine trees or birches, I'm like, do not give me the same. Nature is not equal.
No.
So I teach them to give the negative space equal value.
Yeah.
Equal weight, not necessarily value of color.
Yeah, or equal space. Yeah. So that would be the rhythm, and you'd want to create a rhythm that connects to the feeling that you're trying to capture.
Nature.
Yeah.
Right?
In this case,
that makes so much sense.
Right?
Like pine trees, unless they got planted.
Right, which feels very different.
It feels like a formal English... No, is it an English garden or more of a French garden? But you're right.
Yeah.
Like when trees are planted in rows, it becomes a formality.
Yeah. And so if that's what you're trying to get your viewer to experience, then you should use rhythm in that way.
Okay.
But if you aren't trying to create that feeling, then you have a mismatch and you're not going to have a successful piece.
Amazing.
So
freaking amazing.
The way that you use it will create the success of your piece. Are you successful in reaching your artistic goals, which is the end of the creative process?
Okay.
Your expression of aesthetic judgment. Were they successful in doing what they were trying to do?
Sure. Okay.
So we talked about kind of the line and shape that's created. We've talked about rhythm. We've talked about contrast, movement for sure. Some of the other elements of design would be form, texture, and space. So when we're looking at form, Julia isn't really interested in like describing the specifics of a three-dimensional form. Right. But you still know that it's here. So if you zoomed in, this does not look like a three-dimensional representation of a branch. But if you step back, because we know that shadows are farther back or they're inside, then this starts to read like this is farther away.
Yes.
That these are branches that are protruding forward. So you're using value to create a form. This is a branch that takes up physical space in the three-dimensional world.
Yes.
It's a three-dimensional form as a whole, and you're doing that by using value.
And if we go back to line, my lines in my mind are indicating like the uplifting of these branches, right?
Yeah. And then texture is, again, some artists will use their brush or their materials to actually describe the texture of the thing. So you'll see landscape painters who use a fan brush to create the actual... Julia doesn't do that, but there's still a ton of texture. So you can see that all of the lines are going in the same direction, which is connecting to like a pine needle. But there's also a lot of texture in the paint itself. So if I run my hand along this, you feel the texture. But this is texture, right? The way that Julia specifically, something that is kind of her stroke, is that she doesn't mix her colors. She just kind of picks up a number of colors, and that is a visual texture as well that's happening. Okay. So there's lots of texture, which is very interesting, it's very unique, and it's a mark-making voice a little bit.
Right.
So space is what we talk about a lot of composition. It's where stuff is in your picture. And we talk about the principle that connects to space a lot is balance. You want your piece to be balanced, but it can be balanced asymmetrical.
Absolutely.
And it probably should be.
Absolutely.
If it's balanced symmetrically, it should be really, really intentional.
On purpose.
That you're doing it that way. This is when we're teaching, we get into rule of thirds and leading lines and all of these things to create balance. But we also talk a lot about negative space. And negative space isn't just what's left over. You have to be intentional about your negative space, the shapes that it's creating, the textures and the lines that it has, which is again,
it's one of my most important things.
Yes,
is
negative space. So those are them. We got line, shape, form, color, value, texture, space, and lots of principles.
Right.
Movement, unity, because there is a consistent palette, emphasis and contrast, rhythm with the repetition of the branches, and balance.
That's amazing. Okay, Rachel, now we're at the part where you're going to critique and see if you come to the same conclusion as me, or if I'm going to be like, whoa.
Yeah, so there's 4 steps in the critical analysis. The first one is you just look at it, you kind of describe what you see. There's a step where you're thinking about questions. What do I need to know about this artist? Maybe their body of work. Is there an artist statement? Is there anything else I need to know? Were they creating as part of an activist movement? Were they creating in a certain time period in history where that's going to be really significant to what they were making? In this case, your viewers are usually looking at the context of knowing your work and knowing kind of what your body of work is all about. So you come with, like artists come with context. And then there's that interpretation stage, which we did a little bit. And when we talk about interpretation, people often think like, what's the hidden message and symbol? And it's not, right? It can be. There's lots of art that does have that really rich and deep symbolism, and there's lots of art that doesn't. But it's capturing, again, you're trying to communicate to your audience an experience. And in this case, it's that like windswept nature. If your viewer feels the way that the wind is moving through, and you feel like you're out on the lake at the cottage, then you have been successful.
Right. My artist statement actually talks about that I strive to capture a moment in time that brings you back to comfort.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So that's the goal. Doesn't have to be like, and the colors symbolize the whatever.
Yeah.
People kind of get tripped up on that when they're interpreting. But then you figure, did she do it? So we've talked a lot about the movement and the sky, and I think that definitely creates the sense that there's like you're outside and it's wind over the lake. Even though we don't have a lake here, it's a very iconic shape. It's a very like that shape of the tree as a whole, but also of that like the swoop of this, I think creates that. Now, I know Julia's process and I know what the last step is going to be, and that's what I would say too, is that when we're talking about contrasting values, we don't have the full dynamic range yet.
Right.
So that's usually, and it's for students too, they kind of make fun of me. And when I was in high school, we put it in our yearbook as a quote that our teacher was constantly telling us, go darker. Go darker. Go darker. Go darker. Your highlights need to be lighter. Your shadows need to be darker.
Higher contrast.
And I think it's the number one way students can take their art from like, this looks like a high school portrait, to this is a really great portrait, is to really, really put in their values. And so I know that that's your last step too, because again, if we were to take this piece and put it into black and white, it's very similar.
All right, so now it's black and white.
So we do have dark values down here, and we do have some dark values that are pushing the form, but I would say like this section and the sky are quite similar.
Yes. Do you want to know what I will do at this point? So interestingly, varnish at the end often brings out
a greater dynamic range.
There's a greater dynamic range. So that will introduce all of the turquoises and things will get a little richer. All of my browns and the quinacridones that I use will get a little richer. So I actually know that that's going to happen. So I don't have to necessarily go a little deeper because I don't want it to read black.
Right.
But I do need to, I call it, when I'm talking on painting, I call it the push and pull.
Yes. Yeah.
So I need to pull some of these forms forward and push some back. And again, the varnish will do it. But if I'm coming in here instinctually, I'm hitting all the highlights again, and I'm going to be bringing the whites a little whiter, always with the touch of yellow, a little bit. I don't like to use like pure white, but I'm going to be pulling that a little bit, and the rich dark colors will balance off with a little bit more vibrancy. I don't know when Zoe turned us back color, but she probably did. So I hope that makes sense, and I'll get her to do that at the end of the abstract as well. Okay. So now we're going to turn it around, and we're going to look at an abstract that I'm working on that I think is kind of successful, and we're going to just do a brief rehash of what she just said, and then we're going to finish up the video. Okay? Okay. So this is an abstract that I'm working on. I am doing this with acrylic right now. I may go in and put oil on it, but I'm pleased with it. And so now I want Rachel to kind of tell me why I'm pleased with it, like what it is. And as she's talking, like, I hope you got a few aha moments. Like the big one for me today was the contrast, that it's the value, like my contrast in elements, in color, not just hue, like shade
contrast
and tint.
Any element can have contrast.
Yeah, but I like the idea that it's a complementary color, or analogous, or whatever. That I had not thought of.
Yeah.
So, okay. So I think it's working. You critique me, and then I really need the where to go next.
So again, I'm going to start with color. And if we're describing first, so that's called a formal analysis. You just talk about what you see using the language. We have mostly an analogous color palette.
Yes.
So we've got reds and pinks and purples, even a little bit to the oranges and yellows. Basically, if you think about a color wheel and you can cut it out like a slice of pie, that is analogous color harmony.
Right.
But what's successful is, again, we're creating contrast with the pops of the complementary. So there's a little bit of green, and that's creating a bit of a focal point. That's creating emphasis, and it's also creating a little bit of movement because it tracks through. If you can create, there's 1, 2, 3 areas that have green. There's a little bit up there too, but your eye kind of moves around. So with color, it's successful for that reason. There's a unifying color harmony with the warm analogous colors.
Okay.
And then there's contrast, which creates emphasis with the complementary color.
Okay.
That's also with value, right? This section through here, which again is a nice use of space, it's asymmetrical balance. It's kind of half, but it's not straight down the middle.
Right.
So it's equal in weight,
it's more.
but it's a nice shape. It's not just a boring half and half. These are all fairly similar in terms of their hue, like their saturation.
If we turned it black and white, they might be similar.
So the value of these colors is fairly similar, and then you have a nice balance with the light values on the corner, which again creates it's stable. It doesn't feel like it's.
And actually, we can give Zoe a chance. Let's turn us black and white. Okay.
Yeah, so the color and value are working in that way. And again, there's the principles of balance and contrast and emphasis that are in there.
And in a successful painting, is there a goal to have, do you have to have all 10 values? Like if it's a grayscale from white to black, and there is 10 increments.
Again, it depends on what you're looking for. So if we're talking about realism, we say the more values you have, the more realistic it will look if you're doing a charcoal or graphite drawing. But again, if you're using more dark values, you will create a moodier piece, and maybe your highlights are only at a 5.
Okay.
But if you have what's maybe more a high key image, everything's quite light. It's going to feel very airy, but it's not going to have that like grounded seriousness to it that a dark value will create. So again, it depends on your goal.
Okay.
It depends on your goal.
All right, let's turn us back to color.
All right, so another thing that Mom and I talk about a lot is variety. Variety in the type of marks, the type of textures. So
this is where I'm really learning.
Yeah.
And how to use tools, how to use palette knives and whatever the wedges and pencils and things like that.
So we start like down here, it's very glazy. There's still the texture of the canvas. It's very wet paint. It's very translucent. Whereas up here, it's a lot thicker, and you can kind of see that it's starting to be a lot more closer to impasto, which means that you're seeing the actual physical texture of the paint on the canvas. There's also a lot of variety in the line weight. So there's this very, very heavy red line, and then it's contrasted with these very delicate lines other places. And again, I think I'm not an abstract painter, but when I'm giving Mom feedback, a lot of the time is like, we need another heavy something.
Yes.
There needs to be
the contrast. I think that's my big takeaway.
Yeah.
Is this contrast lesson.
But even when we're talking, I don't know how close we can get here, but there's a really good example of variety, because everything in this painting is really organic. It's very lively. Right. But there's just these little spots of a geometric shape and a geometric pattern.
This was done with stencil, and I spray painted. And I didn't at the beginning, because I never use anything like this in my regular work, I thought, this isn't me. That is not my touch. This is not my, who Julia is. But then I put it in. I have explained it to you. I find it a real sense of organization and rest. Yeah. Like, people stop there, they look around, it's very organized.
Which connects to what we were talking about before. If you have a line of pine trees, it's going to feel
oh my goodness,
still. Right?
Yes.
Because it's an organized, geometric sort of pattern.
So I think I may have been teaching, that organized in a line, all of that is wrong. I think I'm going to now say
it just does a different thing.
It just does a different thing.
It does a different thing.
It's because I'm a gardener. I'm not a formal gardener, and mine's more organic and lively, and I love things spilling over and stuff. But I've seen the benefit when I've gone
Mm-hmm.
to England and gone to the formal gardens,
Mm-hmm.
right? Okay, so I'm giving a little contrast in the craziness.
Yeah.
A place for someone to sit by the water.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And then there's contrast and unity because these circles are repeated just in an organic way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I would say.
I think that's great. After all that, now we're at the point where you're going to critique it and tell me where to go. And with the tree, I knew where I was going and she knew I knew where I was going. So, but with abstract, I don't always know where I'm going. And I find with abstract, there's a history that people are talking about. There's a covering up and an exposing more so than I mean, I do layers and cover up and all of that with my traditional landscape work. But here there's that, this is almost more representational of angst or feelings or whatever. But what would you
It came from abstract expressionism, which
Right.
is just getting your feelings out.
Okay.
So the thing that I talked a little bit about the repetition of some of the shapes, which is really successful, the bouncing of the red color. What I'm picking up on is something maybe called line weight or weight. So most of the piece has quite a fine line weight.
Yes.
Between the drips, the scribbles, all through here, and we have this really wonderful section here, and then I would say this also has some line weight. But if you think about that in terms of composition, they're grouped in a way that's not super balanced.
Okay.
So I might have, even maybe here in this white, something that feels heavier.
Okay. Even a heavier
It could be white because I think
right?
Color-wise, it's quite balanced.
Yeah.
But the weight of your line,
Okay.
so there's all sorts of different ways to create variety and all sorts of ways to create unity. You can have something that's unified in color and varied in shape, or unified in shape and varied in color, and both can be successful. But all of those things you want to work independently as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
so
I know
that's
where
where
I
I
would
would
go.
do it.
I think I know where
I
I
think
would go.
you've almost got it with this heavier
Yes.
grip here.
Yes. This could just
I
become
think
heavier.
even more.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's it's getting close.
It's getting close. Okay, there we go. There's the critique. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Rachel and I have been trying to do this for a while. So Grandpa said that he would take Michelle, who is here, to McDonald's. So he said, great, we can do it. So thank you to Grandpa. So he's Bop Bop. Amos named him Bop Bop. So we have to, in your comments, say thank you to Bop Bop so that we had some time together to do this. But Rachel, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to doing more. We're hoping to do some things, but let me know if you want to know more in depth about each element. And it may take the next year, guys, to put this together. It may.
Mom of 3 with a full-time job.
That's right. That's right. So, but we'll have to have more McDonald's trips. Okay. Please like and subscribe. Share this with friends because I think that a lot of people will find this extremely interesting and informative. And we'll see you in the next video.